You might recall a couple of years ago when we did a video on how you should prune your brambles. We were talking specifically about Chester, our thornless blackberry, that had decided to be really happy and gallop through the woods here. Well, you'll notice that after this very interesting winter that we've had in Nebraska, Chester is very unhappy. One of the issues with the thornless blackberries can be winter hardiness, and what you're seeing is actually a lot of pretty dead canes on this particular bramble. You can see some new growth at the bottom, but you can also see that the canes themselves last year were not pruned properly. They were not brought back to about a 36-inch height. The laterals were not trained. So we have a lot of dead material that we're going to have to remove from this particular blackberry. A favorite raspberry for a lot of home gardens is one called Heritage, which is considered both a summer-bearing and a fall-bearing raspberry. Interestingly enough, though, this is primocanes where the fruit is born. If you don't cut all the Heritage raspberries off earlier than this, you end up with a pretty weak summer crop or an early summer crop and a less strong fall crop. Because what happens is the old fruiting canes are still here. They have put on lateral growth. This is where the new flowers will occur. Ideally, what would happen also with Heritage raspberry is you would control its spread and put it essentially into either a less brambly location or a spot where you can actually do a little bit more picking. So at this point with our Heritage raspberry, what we're going to do is take off the old fruiting areas. We're going to consider digging or taking out some of the canes that have spread. Treat this a little bit more like a raspberry that will fruit both in the summer and in the fall, and see what happens. One of the developments in the raspberry world or the berry world is what's called brazelberries. This is raspberry shortcake. These were actually developed and bred for container production for a smaller garden. These are also raspberries that you do not want to remove any of the foliage on the plant, because to be able to put the carbohydrates into the stem and into the ground, it's very important to have as much foliage as possible. This has only been in our landscape for a single year, and actually last year it produced a lot of good fruit. So what we're really going to do here is simply take the old canes out, the old dead material. It's always very important with all of the brambles or the raspberries and blackberries to get all the dead material out whenever you see it, because that is where the inoculum for diseases can occur. We're going to leave the small runners on the sides because, again, those will be potentially fruiting canes. A very important point is to know which raspberries or brambles you have in your landscape, because there are different pruning techniques. And keep in mind also with that Heritage and the other ones that spread, if you are taking out and thinning out those plants, you want to go as low as possible down to the ground to be able to force the carbohydrates into the canes that you want to remain on the plant.